Hi, it's Paculus here, and we got pretty lucky this weekend, I must say. Um, we had torrential rains on Friday, which in this part of the world, that's pretty unusual for January when I'm filming this. And but we got torrential rains, and then they said it was going to the temperature was just going to drop. Hello, shade was going to really drop fast overnight, and so we were expecting, really, to be honest with you, like kind of an ice rink the next day, and it actually snowed a lot. And I'm not even sure I've ever been that happy to see snow before, because we figured like we'd never get the horses turned out because it would be just like an ice rink. So we're pretty happy about that. So, but it got us thinking a little bit about things that you have to think about in the wintertime. There's all sorts of things we can talk about in the winter, but we'll stick to these three. So one of the things is, how the horses cope with the cold or with the elements, so to speak. The thing with horses is they can deal with quite a bit of cold. What really gets horses is if they get wet or if there's a real draft on them. Cold is not so bad for horses. The thing with horses, they've got such a great amount of natural oil right at the base of their coat. I don't know if you can see it there. Like, he's actually really, really shiny, but if you turn his coat sort of upside down, he looks like he's got sort of gray, sort of dandruffy in there. And that's just that natural oil that actually keeps him nice and warm and dry. So, if our guys are out like it was on the weekend here with all that rain, they couldn't stay out the whole day because eventually, even with a horse that's good flesh like she is, and even a horse that has a lot of natural oil in their coat, eventually that water does get through the oil and gets down to the horse's skin, and then they're going to be cold no matter what. One of the ways you can tell a horse is cold is that they'll clamp their tail down on their rear end a little bit. They'll sort of hold it tight against them. That doesn't mean they're in crisis. It just means they're feeling the cold, right? But when it worries me is when they start to tremble. But until they get wet, they really can tolerate the cold. Like, these guys were outside and were very happy to stay outside. We were bringing them in for a lesson, but even though they were coated with snow like that, they weren't cold at all. Sometimes you'll hear people say that a horse is an animal and he can fare quite well outside. But the thing is, in nature, he would seek shelter in bad weather like this. So a horse standing in an open field with just the wind and the elements hitting him all the time, that's not the same thing, and it's not fair. Another thing you have to worry about in the winter time is that the horse gets enough water. Sometimes you'll hear people say, well, they can just eat snow to satisfy their thirst, but that's not actually true. The horse drinks so much water, he would die of hypothermia if he ate that much snow. It's pretty easy to tell if your horse is dehydrated. You just pinch a little bit of skin and it should go back nice and flat like hers does. It shouldn't sort of stay up like a little tent. It should just drop right back down. What we'll do in the wintertime if we're worried is we'll offer them all a little bit of warmed up water before they go out in the morning, just to make sure that they're getting enough before they spend the day outside. Final thing I worry about is snowballs, and that's what that first picture was when you first came in. When horses stand outside, their feet have a little bit of heat to them, even though they feel probably cold to our touch. They're still warmer than the snow, and the horse will end up getting snow packed into their feet. And when they come in onto concrete, that can be a really kind of a treacherous thing. You can see there, this horse is like standing up on a little bit of a snow stilt almost, right? So all of a sudden they can really slip because they've lost all their natural traction. So you have to get those out before the horse has to make any corners or turns. You just want to go down the cleft of the frog and then sort of pry it off. So I know that's three things, but here's one more, kind of a bonus one. We have sliding doors on barns, and a lot of people do. And in the winter time, you really, really want to make sure that the doors are able to slide open if ever there's an emergency. It's a real priority for us to make sure that we always shovel that area after a big snow so that no matter which door we have here, you can still get out of the barn in an emergency. This one's actually not that bad. I had already shoveled out the bad doors. I'll show you a picture of the door that I had shoveled out. This one was a little bit worse, and it was a lot of snow. I had to actually come around from the outside in order to shovel it out. And you just want to look after stuff like that. God forbid if ever there was a fire, you just want to be able to get those horses out. So that's it for this week. That's just our 3 tips for some winter stuff to worry about their how they deal with the elements, making sure they get lots to drink, and making sure that when you step in on the concrete floor, they don't have those big snowballs packed in their feet. Let me know if you've got any other things that you try to figure out in the winter time. Winter can make everything a little bit harder for everybody, as anybody who lives in these kind of climates knows, but it's beautiful as well. So that's exactly. Okay. Remember to thank your horse. We'll see you next week. Thanks. Thank you, Shade.